Welcome back to Orange County Live. Thanks for joining us. We're discussing getting back to school and how to make this a successful school year for your student. Now, we want you to join the conversation by dialing 407-685-LIVE. That's 407-685-5483. Or you can chat online and submit your questions to us by going to orangetvfl.net and clicking on the chat button. Now, joining me is Dr. Vicki Cartwright. She is the Senior Executive Director of Exceptional School Education at Orange County Public Schools. We have Kristen Iannuzzi, Orange County Teacher of the Year, and we also have Sergeant Kyle Morse from the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Now, while students are at school, we expect them to be in a healthy environment that facilitates learning. So let's start our conversation with some of the new programs and initiatives at Orange County Public Schools that help students to learn.
Absolutely. We have a lot of programs that are available for our students. One of the things that we're very proud of this year is that our school board went ahead and they allocated additional funds for us to hire 5 additional certified mental health counselors. Because oftentimes when we're working with our students, not only are we concerned about their academic needs, but we're also concerned about their health needs, and it's not physical health, but also their mental health. So that is one initiative that our school board very much was committed to, and we're seeing the fruition of that, and we're looking forward to that because it's going to provide us opportunities to lot more training with our teachers on recognizing some of those signs and symptoms of our students when they are in need.
Because it must be very important to identify any learning issues that students might have.
Oftentimes, of course, you know, whenever you have any time of extenuating circumstances, it does impact your academics as well. So by having the staff on hand and people to be able to identify when a student is struggling from that health component, from the mental health component, when we're providing them with the proper services and working collaboratively with the families and with community resources, then we also see an increase with their academics as well. So there's definitely a direct connection in that.
So what I would imagine that a parent's role is very important because they can kind of watch out for some signs, whether or not their student is gifted or having some challenges. So what should they look for?
Absolutely. When you're looking at for students, you're absolutely right. There's a large spectrum. You have your very bright students, and you also have your students who are struggling. This past year, we started a new program called our Universal Screening. And originally it was with our Title I schools, and now it's been expanded to all schools in Orange County Public Schools, and so that all second graders are screened for giftedness. And so whenever we're doing that, we're looking for those students who may not have necessarily been very obvious that they would qualify for gifted services. Parents, of course, if they're noticing that their child's really quick to learn things, or they can see, oh, you know, they're really smart, they're able to do those things, can always have the conversation with their teacher and look at ways in which either to provide extension activities, enrichment activities for those students, as well as saying, okay, well, maybe we need to test them for gifted services. It goes from that spectrum all the way to students who are struggling with school. If a parent is noticing that a student's having difficulties, maybe they're doing their homework, but it's taking them an extraordinary amount of time to get it done, and even then, they aren't doing that well with it, or they're not doing well academically with their courses. It could be going in, taking a look at, saying, I think something may be wrong. And those are some of the signs that they would possibly see at home. Have that conversation with the teacher, because when we have that conversation with the teacher, we look at it and the teacher takes that information and looks at the information that they have as well, and we get into a process where there actually is a very systematic process where a teacher starts working with them, other people start working with them, other resources at the school and sometimes outside of the school come in and try to provide help for that child and see if we can work with them, and if they are able to be successful, then we're wonderful and we found what needs to happen. If they need specialized services or specialized instruction, at that point in time we even look at possibly looking into what we call for students with disabilities, looking at eligibility for that.
So as a teacher, Kristen, can you talk about some of the things or some of the strategies, I guess, that you used? Obviously, you're a very successful teacher. Congratulations on being the Teacher of the Year.
Thank you.
What are some of the strategies that you employ in your classroom?
My main strategy, honestly, is passion and letting my students know I care about them. And I, that's day one, because if they know I care about them, then they want to learn. And for me, that's forefront, because this is much more than just an English class. It's a life class for me, and it's getting them to understand that there's so much beyond what they're capable of, and they're able to go so far beyond. But I really, as a teacher, try to adapt to my students' needs. I don't like sitting still very much, so my students move a lot. They're constantly up, and it's the kinesthetic stuff that has been studied, and I make them move, and I also adapt to their individual needs.
That's interesting. What do they say when they first go into your classroom and they see some of the things that you use in your kind of toolkit of teaching?
I think at first they're scared, and then they start to get it, and because I'm very upfront, I'm very intense, and I tell them that upfront. But then they start to realize that what I'm doing is for the betterment of them, and I care about them before I care about the course. And I think that really helps in ensuring they understand that it's a safe environment for them to learn and struggle and then succeed.
Safety, we keep hitting on that issue of safety. What are some of the things that you encounter as a school officer?
Just the access to the school and things like that we're mainly concerned about, and we try and mitigate that with our presence, and then also allowing those students to feel safe when we're at the school, and that's mainly our presence there, is to allow those students to feel safe and continue to learn and feel comfortable in that environment.
You know, one of the topics I was hoping to touch on is bullying, because that is something that we see a lot of in the news. We hear a lot about that. What are some of the warning signs that parents and teachers can look out for when they see bullying, and what should they do?
A change in behavior is the biggest thing that we see. And the teachers see it, the parents see it. Sometimes it's not identified that it's bullying that's causing it. They're going through a change in their lives that you may attribute to that. But the main thing is a change in behavior, and staying involved with that child, staying involved and knowing what's going on in their lives, and being involved in their presence online and their presence with their phones, because we're seeing a lot less on a computer and more on a phone. Just being involved with them will allow you to see that change and kind of know what to expect and see what's going on.
And at what point does it kind of turn into a law enforcement issue?
We don't get involved as much with bullying unfortunately, until it becomes a crime with the law enforcement. We are a resource and we can assist with that, but we get in with their stalking, battery, when someone's pushing and shoving and tripping. The school board will get us involved at that point, or parents sometimes call and say, I feel my child's being bullied. They have bruises sometimes. And that's when we start getting into what crime has occurred, and that's where law enforcement presence comes in a greater amount.
And Dr. Cartwright, I'm sure this is an area where those counselors are just so critical.
Absolutely. And again, one of those things that we're finding across the entire nation is the importance for us to be able to be proactive rather than reactive. And so by providing training for our teachers and for other school personnel on recognizing some of those symptoms for students who may have some needs exhibited there, whether it be related for because sometimes those students may become victims of bullying or become bullies themselves. That is one characteristic, but it's only a small portion of that. So these are things that definitely we have to take into consideration.
Yeah. Well, we have a caller. We have Ray in Winter Park. Hi, Ray. What's your question?
Hi, good evening. I was calling tonight wondering, is there still a need for crossing guards this year?
Oh, he's asking about crossing guards, if there is still a need for crossing guards. But you can handle that question.
Yes, definitely. The amount of speeding traffic and the amount of students that are walking to schools, the need is greater than ever, and they are always short and need more crossing guards. With the intersections, as Orange County continues to grow, there's always new intersections that the safety of those children is paramount.
Okay. Well, I've heard this phrase, 100 deadliest days for teens. What does that refer to?
I'm actually the SAD advisor at our school, which is Students Against Destructive Decisions, and we do a lot of work with DUIs and educating students about the dangers of that sort of thing. And the 100 deadliest days of the summer is between Labor Day and Memorial Day, or Memorial Day and Labor Day, and that is the most prone time teens are to get in an accident. What people don't realize is that's the #1 cause of death for teenagers. And there's so much that goes on with that. And in between those two dates, in 2012, there were close to 1,000 fatalities because of teenage drivers during those summer months.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And close to half of them were the actual teenagers who passed.
So kids are really getting introduced to alcohol, drugs earlier now than they used to be.
Right, and that's something that it needs to be an honest conversation. And I think parents need to talk, teachers need to talk, kids need to talk. They need to understand the repercussions are so much more than they realize. And you know, drinking and driving once, and you can end up dead. And I think a lot of people think it won't happen to me, but it absolutely will.
Yeah, and it does. Let's check in with Carol now in the chat room to see what's going on online. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Laureen, we started off this segment asking our chat room viewers what they perceive that students might think is the biggest challenge that they face. So sometimes it's not only academics, but it's being popular, fitting in. Taking tests is a piece of that, but being bullied. And your appearance, your physical appearance, that plays a role as well. So we've got a poll going right now. And so far, not being popular, those that are viewing this think that's probably the biggest issue for students that they face, and 50% said that. But being bullied and their appearance each came in at 25%. So definitely some challenges that students face, not necessarily academics, but certainly that plays a role in their academics. So we look forward to more conversations. I think this is such great dialogue that's going on in the chat room. So be a part of the conversation, orangetvfl.net, and click on the chat button. Thanks, Laureen.
All right, thanks, Carol. Do you find that interesting, those results?
I find that very interesting. Actually, I think we find that pretty normal, a lot of the results that are out there, because it is that self-image and it's the wanting to fit in and the acceptance. And children want to accept, just as we adults want to fit in and be accepted by our peers.
And do you see that in the classroom a lot, kind of this competition?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, they're at a tough age, and there's competition everywhere. If they play sports, there's a competition there. There's competition getting college. It's a constant environment, and we create it where they are competing with each other.
So how can parents kind of, I guess, reduce that pressure for their students?
I think understanding your students' limits, and I think being very honest with yourself about the students' limits and limitations and where they excel, but just realizing, you know, what their students are capable of.
And also possibly keeping that open line of communication with them. Not necessarily being a friend, definitely being a parent, but having that open line of communication to where if they know that they're in trouble or something doesn't feel right or they're not being accepted or they're really upset about it or depressed, that they can go and talk to their parents about it.
And just thinking about this whole, you know, how you look and how popular you are, does dress code or any kind of rules, does that help kind of ease the situation at all, or?
I think they find ways to try to get around it because they're worried about their looks and because they're so concerned. I wish dress code was less of an issue, honestly, and people would respect themselves more, just to kind of understand that this is all a time of learning and growing and just understanding each other. So the dress code is definitely an issue.
Yeah. What can parents do if they feel like their child is being mistreated at school or bullied? Should they call the principal? What are some of the things that they can do?
I think that's the number one thing that they should do, is definitely communicate with the school. It is so important to have that open line of communication with the school and the families, because oftentimes what will happen is they're aware that something is going on, but they don't let anyone at the school know, and whatever is occurring at school, no one's aware that it's occurring. So there's not an opportunity to intervene or to provide any type of guidance or counseling for the child. And so if we're aware of what's going on and we have that communication both ways, then it's what's best for the child and helps that child to be successful and get the right help that they may or may not need.
And I'm sure it's frustrating for parents, because they probably just don't know what to do sometimes.
Right. The best approach a lot of times is, the first line of defense I always say is talking with the teachers, because the teachers know the children so well. Oftentimes, if they feel as though they don't know their teachers that well, or they feel as though that not enough is being done, then of course reaching out to the school guidance counselor, reaching out to the school administration, any type of contact to the school, that communication, just to let us know what's going on so that we can work with the families in order to help the child. That's our number one goal.
And I'm sure that school officials work obviously very closely when it comes to these types of issues, mental health, with the law enforcement as well, with the Sheriff's Department.
Yes, we go through a lot of training to where we work cooperatively together, and getting those parents involved, it is great, and we see a much greater success rate when the parents are involved, and we work as a team every day. So when we can bring that parent in and they want to be actively involved, we encourage that as much as possible.
Okay, any last thoughts? We just have a couple minutes left.
Only thing I would say or add to the conversation is that we're very fortunate in that a lot of our community resources we wrap around. In fact, there's a place called Wraparound Orange with Orange County.
Yes.
And so we collaborate a lot. We're really looking to make sure that we're providing services for the children all the way around. And we even have through different organizations such as SEDNet and different things like that. So if we know there are services available, we want to make sure that we're helping the child, because that's what it's all about.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you all for being with us for Orange County Live. We'd like to take a short break, but keep your questions coming. Call 407-685-LIVE. Email us at live@orangetvfl.net and chat with Carol at orangetvfl.net. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Orange County Live.